Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Building and rebuilding neighborhoods tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by three heads of community development corporations around the city. First up is Rashawn Austin from The Works, covering South Memphis. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you.
Noah Gray is Executive Director of the Binghamton Development Corporation. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Eric.
Steve Lockwood is Executive Director of the Fraser Community Development Corporation. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you. Along
with Bill Dries, reporter with the Daily Memphian. So for each of you, and Noah, this is your first time on the show, so I'll start with you for better or worse, that the biggest accomplishment, you all have a lot going, in all your neighborhoods, you have a lot going on and a lot of challenges in terms of, as I said at the top of the show, building and rebuilding neighborhoods against a lot of historic issues and a lot of historic sort of these incredible opportunities. But for you, if you look back at the last year or 2 years, whatever, the big accomplishments that you're most proud of.
Most notably is the development of the neighborhood's first grocery store at Tillman and Sam Cooper, the Binghamton Gateway Center. That was a decades-long journey that ended up being a real win when neighbors could walk to the grocery store for the first time in the history of the neighborhood and buy vegetables. That was significant and took quite a bit to get that done. And
the ramifications of that are vegetables, I mean, obviously in food, and that,
sure.
I mean, but beyond that, what does it mean to the neighborhood and what impact does that have beyond the buying of groceries?
Sure, Eric. There's several real impacts. I mean, at the top, there's just the physical kind of blight to hope story that we've seen time and time again in Binghamton, and really particularly on Tillman over the last decade as investment has happened. But beyond that is job creation, both in construction and also full-time jobs. And then really there's, again, this kind of this intangible of hope that it represents, a $7 million investment in a core urban neighborhood that has never seen an investment like that, but has asked for it for so long.
Yeah. Rashawn, same question to you. So the biggest or some of the biggest accomplishments that you look at?
I guess over the last couple of years, oddly enough, it's around food. An investment in independent grocery stores and the expansion of our work with local employers. It's all about people being hired, advancing. But I guess when people think about CDCs, they often think about housing. And so our Opportunity Home Loan Fund, our small dollar mortgage loan fund, over the last 2 years, $2 million or more in investment to everyday people so that they can live in neighborhoods and gain real wealth with equity in their homes.
And again, to you, Steve, the same thing. I mean, for you, the accomplishment of the last 2 or 3 that makes you most proud in the work you all have done.
It's different. It's interesting how different each of our neighborhoods and situations are. Fraser is huge, as you know, geographically, and has a large population. So our objective never was to just build our business and produce 150 houses. It was to move the needle in the entire neighborhood. And we've actually, in the last few years, it's been really gratifying, we've been able to do that. So housing prices, long stagnated, are rising sharply. Abandoned houses, you know, really affected by the foreclosure crisis are dropping fast. So the entire neighborhood, particularly from a housing standpoint, is just getting much healthier. And we've always tried to be strategic to bring in other partners and to make that happen because it's so large. If we have to do all the work, we'll never get there.
Yeah. Let me bring in Bill.
Rashawn, you're also in the midst of a very ambitious undertaking in Fraser.
That's right.
So are you and Steve working together on that? I mean, obviously what happens with this, well, talk about the apartment complex.
So we're under construction. 146 units. Today it's 152. It's a major rehab we're finding lots of change orders. The development total cost is about $17.7 million. And yes, Steve and I are working in concert because he's doing all of the single family work around in the neighborhood surrounding that major multifamily development.
This is an apartment complex at Steel and Whitney.
Steel and Delwood.
Steel and Delwood in Fraser that was built probably
Early 1970s.
Yeah. So multifamily and single family, Steve. We normally I would venture to say when that apartment complex was built, that was probably considered a deterrent to single family housing. It's different now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, all of this is in a place we call the MLK zone. Martin Luther King Prep is right cat-a-corner from her apartments, from her son's apartments, and so we've been concentrating on that neighborhood from a standpoint of single family. But it takes a lot more than that. There are another couple of handfuls of partners, and I mean that's really, symbolic of what's going on in Fraser. So there are people working on educational issues and safety issues, and Girls Inc. is building a new headquarters and working with young people, and Porter Leith is bringing in a new facility. So what Rashawn and I are doing is just part of yet a larger picture.
Yeah.
Noah, Tillman Cove is also going in. We were all out there, I think, when the bulldozers came in and started taking down the apartment complex there. But there are still meetings underway in terms of what this is going to look like and what it's going to mean to the community that exists today in that area.
That's right, yeah, and Rashawn and Steve would, I'm sure, agree that community engagement is such a significant piece of any big development in a neighborhood. It's not ever really about what can we dream up in the corners of our office, but how can we really respond to the community need. And so the 8-acre development that's going to happen at Tillman Cove is really a response to resident requests over many years to get rid of what is probably one of the most egregious blights currently in the city of Memphis, and we are really excited to be a part of the redevelopment of that over the next couple of years.
And if people, just to orient people, Tillman Cove, unless I've got my geography off, is where the right down from where the Green Line starts.
That's right.
Kind of sort of between the Broad Avenue area, then the grocery store. Mm-hmm. There's fields that have gone in over there. There's a police station, and then there are these blighted two-story apartments.
Yeah, it's 116 unit, 8 acres, just north of the Green Line, and it's you can't miss it driving down Tillman. It's on the east side of the street.
It's interesting. I was reading, David Waters did a big 3-part piece for us on Binghamton and everything that's going on. In some ways, he probably could have done it on any of your neighborhoods and other neighborhoods in Memphis that are going through this kind of mix of how do you rebuild. It was interesting, we talk about rebuilding multifamily over here, and that multifamily, Tillman Cove, had become a source of a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. Crime, concentration of poverty, blight, abandonment. I mean, it was kind of the worst of multifamily. And over here, you've got Rashawn trying to do the best of the best of multifamily. I mean, how did Tillman Cove end up that bad?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's many times is the case in our neighborhoods, disinvestment. And so how do you invest reinvest in a way that uplifts the residents in the neighborhood? And so specifically, it shut down in early 2016 when the owner, I guess it wasn't cash flowing well enough and just gave everybody a couple weeks to move. So all of the families that were there had to leave like that. And then it got worse and worse over time. Sociologists will tell you, broken window theory, crime's 80% higher on properties like that, and so something had to be done.
And you've seen real drops in crime as you've taken care of this, is that right?
Yeah, there's so much data on the police calls significantly dropping when you start to reinvest in properties like Rashawn and Steve have done over the years in their neighborhoods as well.
Are you seeing that? We've had you on the show a number of times over the years talking about a variety of things, but certainly about how hard, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Fraser was hit by the foreclosure crisis, and just whole streets where half the streets went into foreclosure. I mean, just really decimated by bad lending and subprime and Alt-A and all that. Have you, as you've rebuilt homes, and it's been a combination of things in Fraser, right? I mean, you all are rehabbing homes and selling them. Yeah. I think some private investors have come in and rebuilt homes and sold them, but a whole lot of people have come in, bought up homes that are now being rented. How has that played out, 10 years from the height of the financial crisis?
That's still, in spite of our efforts, and our homeownership campaign and our efforts have been really quite successful. But the greater phenomenon going on is still investors buying up blighted properties, fixing them and renting them. The good news is not all of those people are slumlords. And so the good news is they have helped us to attack blight. And again, there was a time when we had 1,500 abandoned houses. It's over our ability to do. On the other hand, when folks buy them, fix them, sell them to out-of-town investors and lock them into long-term rental, they're locked into long-term rental. It's a phenomenon we're struggling with. We don't exactly have the answer. I would say something we're trying lately, which is proving to be interesting, is to send letters to hundreds of out-of-town and even out-of-country investors who own properties saying, prices are up, let us help you sell your house to your existing tenant. It's a stronger response than we thought. So my housing counselors are working with tenants trying to help them, and their cost of housing can be cut more than in half.
Yeah, you all have billboards up, right? So
We do.
around town. Walk through your pitch on that.
Our initial phrase was, don't rent for $700, buy for $480, and we've actually gotten people into, sometimes with the help of Rashawn in her lending, gotten people into houses for as low as $320. We just worked with a lady.
$320 a month in terms of a house payment.
Taxes and insurance included.
Yeah.
We just worked with a woman who called her landlord after taking our class and bought her own house for $22,000, and her rent went from $700 to a payment of $260.
Right. And this dynamic is fascinating. We've done whole shows on it and articles on it, but it is fascinating. I mean, these out-of-town people, which people don't, I think it's something like 25% of the homes in Memphis are owned by investors who are renting them.
And it's more in Fraser.
And it's more, and then more in Fraser.
Yeah.
And that many of them are out of town, and it's people with, I mean, they're buying houses for $20,000 or less. They have maybe a local company manage that rental process for them. And that's often, if I understand right, whoever that rental person is often where it can go haywire, because there's a very passive investor in California who doesn't know what's going on with that. Then you've got hedge funds and Wall Street level, and Rashawn is nodding. I mean, so I remember talking to you about this years ago, and you said so far it's been okay because they are rehabbing the homes and they're treating the homes well, but it's you've been nervous about it for 8 years, 10 years running.
Let me be clear. Some are doing a good job,
Yeah.
and some are doing a terrible job.
Yeah.
The guy who's doing the most volume in Fraser manages well, rehabs well. We're fortunate in that, but there are other companies using the same model who are terrible.
Yeah. And do you all have, and before, two quick things before I ask you some more questions. One, I always have to disclose, you are a board member of the Daily Memphian, Memphis Fourth Estate over that. It's not why we have you here. We have you here because you're doing really interesting stuff. But I need to disclose that. And two, define South Memphis and the area you work in, because South Memphis is way too vague a description of.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's probably smaller than Fraser in population, even if I talk about all of the zip codes in South Memphis. And originally, our organization was really defined by 2 square miles. We're not, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, now you're doing
if
stuff
we're
in-
doing stuff in Fraser.
Okay.
But our South Memphis work, I think I need to look at zip codes, and that's 38106 and 38109. And we kind of go over into 38126, which is the South City area, because we've done some lending there and we do minor home repair services there. And so I don't know if we were totally defined by geography, but a lot of our placemaking work is in the broader South Memphis, because I can get really granular about neighborhoods, and we just call it South Memphis, but there are people who call their neighborhoods by a name, and not South Memphis.
You were nodding as we were talking about housing, and do you have the same dynamic that you've got some good out-of-town rentals that are good for the neighborhood and some that are awful?
And I think, well, in 38106, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of investors. We have whole blocks that are just vacant and investors have not picked them up. I was nodding because I spent some time in between my nonprofit stints in the for-profit mortgage world. And I watched bulk REO sales. And so you had those equity funds
REO.
or real estate owned by the bank. And so they had gone through either a foreclosure process, or they the bank gave up and said, hey, this is not worth foreclosure. And so they went into bulk sale, but the people abandoned the homes. They probably could have stayed. And they have these events in Vegas, and you have these investment groups or individuals who buy homes in bulk in neighborhoods that are distressed. And sometimes they don't do anything with those. And
What tools, before I go to Bill, what tools do you all have to attack that?
so
Because the house is owned, let's say the taxes are, I mean, maybe are or aren't paid. I mean, what can you do to move that property?
And so I think as an industry, our partner, Neighborhood Preservation Inc., has led work under the Neighborhood Preservation Act at the state level, which was passed in 2014, each year we're sending up items under that legislation to get passed, shorten the tax foreclosure process, deal with abandonment and blight. The Environmental Court is a great partner, and it's always been, and it's unique in Shelby County. It's unique across the country. Now we have the University of Memphis Law School as a partner with the Neighborhood Preservation Clinic. And so I think we all are working on that in our individual ways, and we're very supportive of the legislative and policy work that's being done at the state and local level to help us attack some of those problems we're dealing with in neighborhoods.
Bill.
Right.
You've all talked about being strategic, picking areas and projects that are going to trigger some kind of private development in other areas. Are we at a tipping point, though, I wonder, where the folks who are for-profit companies begin to change how they look at what pencils out for them?
I think so. For years and years, we would have said the part of the BDC's objective in the Binghamton neighborhood was to catalyze. I think at some point you stop saying that any development is good development. You start saying it's not just about the stick of what we can do with the Preservation Act, but what's a carrot to help people develop the right thing. And so one of the things that's been hopeful and it will. Hopefully we'll look back and say this was a really great thing, but the establishment of the Binghamton TIF a couple years ago, I believe, can help incent folks to develop the right thing and help preserve affordability in the neighborhood, so that we don't look back and recognize that that investment was starting to displace people in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, these three neighborhoods are so radically different. We're in different stages of development. That neighborhood, Binghamton, is heated up, and they worry about being so expensive that people can't stay there. The South Memphis Works neighborhood has not had the kind of investment that Fraser. We seem to be, the mama bear in the middle there. But we're in a prime position to help the city with its 3.0 mantra of build up, not out. But we've got to be really cautious about what that building looks like. Mm-hmm. And there's always concern, sometimes overly concerned about gentrification and the like. But what we do have to make sure is, as the neighborhood changes, who is it who benefits from that change? Because our neighborhoods are going to change, they need to change, they will change, but exactly what does that look like? Mm-hmm.
And I think Steve mentioned a longer term change for South Memphis, and so a lot of the work we do in South Memphis is around infrastructure. Making sure our streets are pedestrian friendly, getting people out and active, doing pocket parks, and just riding bikes and telling people about the assets in South Memphis, because you can go near MLK Riverside Park and like I said, there are whole blocks that are vacant. Things have been knocked down because our policies have been locally to demolish, and that was an improvement, I guess, to some. But you ended up with fields of land where there used to be people and houses.
But I mean, you're all undertaking and redoing an apartment complex is even though the CDC is a nonprofit, this is a major undertaking. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you're doing this with a mindset that people are not going to be displaced by it. So can a private developer now incorporate, can they learn from that in their pursuit of what meets their bottom line? That doesn't have to mean, all right, we've got to pay for what we just built new here, so that means the rents go up and maybe people who have been there are not there anymore.
So I think what private developers benefit from is us going in first. We're the pioneers. And so, Steve and his single family work in Fraser, he's been his comparables in terms of appraisals, and so he's starting to get those cups up, and so it makes sense for a private developer to come in because they can get a return on their investment. Today in multifamily in Fraser and probably in most neighborhoods that we work in, you can't pencil. Our deal is subsidized. About $6 million of that $17.7 million is really soft philanthropic dollars, and so we're negative, and so private developers are not going to come in and make negative money. We don't really want to make it, but our work because of the type of work we do, we will take the losses so that we can encourage private development to come in. And we are having a development that's 100% affordable, long term. So we're talking 35 years of affordability, and I'm assuming I'm not going to be around in 35 years.
I know I won't.
Not necessarily dead, but not doing this. And so we know for the next 35 years that development will be affordable, but we need different types of people in neighborhoods. You need homeowners, you need renters, because we always talk about in Memphis a 27% poverty rate. We can't force everybody today to be in home ownership because they can't afford not just the note, but just being a homeowner. They have to fix the things. Nobody comes and does that for you when you're a homeowner. And so we have to provide quality housing for all segments of our population where they are today.
How much I'll go to Noah first. Memphis 3.0, I broadly defined as the strategic plan for the city. It's heavily, and I think I'm part of, and often the media is part of, kind of defining it's more of a land use plan with a little bit of goals around transit. But it's actually much more than that. And I talked to Eric Robertson, who you all know from Community Lift, on a podcast this week, and he said, got into all the goals about poverty and the goals about education and goals that are much, much more than land use and streetscape. It's now, the mayor said he would just go ahead and implement it. It was delayed, passage was delayed by the council until a week or two ago.
No, yesterday.
This week.
Yes,
this
okay.
week.
And this will air next week, so a little bit of a time warp. But just recently passed. What does it, now that it's passed by the city, what does 3.0 do for you, if anything, or were you already abiding by it?
Yeah, let me say it this way. Health is so holistic. It's, we're talking about housing and physical development, and physical progress is incredible. But what 3.0 acknowledges is that we have to be working to build capacity in people too, and obviously around the anchor strategy. But we can physically develop neighborhoods till we're blue in the face. But if we're not also working to empower people and help improve economic mobility, then we're leaving folks behind in our neighborhoods. And so, if rising tide lifts all boats, unless you don't have a boat and then you sink. And so I think in addition to the physical development of our neighborhood, we have to move the economics of the neighborhood. We have to create jobs in core kind of places in the neighborhoods where people can work, and we can work on transportation and those type of things in conjunction with physical and housing development.
For each of you, how does Memphis 3.0 change what you're doing or empower what you're doing in Fraser? Or
well, it confirms, it helps. Sprawl has been killing this city and county for decades, and oftentimes we haven't known that. But it's really killed Fraser. Fraser, again, right north of downtown, is in the prime position to add thousands of units. We have many square miles of buildable land, and it just provides us a forum in which to say, let us help tie in with this plan. We're right on I-40, we're right by downtown, we got infrastructure there that is underutilized. Let's be a part of this. It's good for the neighborhood, it's good for the city, it's good for the county.
And so for me, I've been probably the biggest advocate in face of Memphis 3.0, and people didn't understand why. And so it is land use. It's about land use to me. And so what I've said before the council, because I don't want our Office of Planning and Development dictating those other things that they're no good at. And sorry, John, but their job is about land use, and 63% of Shelby County's revenue comes from property taxes. I told the council, and I told other people, when I talk about the plan, what they've said to me over the last decades in this city is that they support urban sprawl and white flight. Because it's been very punitive for us to develop in distressed neighborhoods, because we don't have a conforming lot that's 6,000 square feet, because we don't have farmland where we're building new. And so what's happened is our legislative bodies have followed suit with this support of urban sprawl and flight, and they've invested their CIP dollars. Their capital improvement budget has been targeting where they said they want to see investment. And they may not have meant it in their hearts, but they did it. So their utilities have gone that way, their roads have gone that way. And what 3.0 says, level the playing field, because if I'm not a big developer with a lot of money who can get to the legislators and say, I'm going to do this ad hoc, and so my development is down the Poplar Corridor, and I want you to invest your CIP and your utility support that way. And that's what's happened. So our council, our process has been very ad hoc. So the developers are doing the moving, and so it's the tail wagging the dog. 3.0 changes that for us because we're doing work on non-conforming lots in inner city neighborhoods that were built long before you had the suburban or former suburban parts of Memphis, long before we became 324 square miles of city. Our neighborhoods were there.
I have just 27 seconds left, and so I can't ask a serious question, so I'm going to go back to something we talked about before the show. Noah, how do you say Binghamton?
Binghamton, not Binghamton, but Binghamton.
Where does that confusion come from?
Clerical error in 1893 when the town's name was recorded.
So Binghamton, though, is that's the way it's to be said.
That's right.
Okay, now we've settled that, and we've gotten through all the big issues. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.